Awesome. Okay, welcome everybody. I think all of us on the call have been to a meeting before, so I don't know if we need to go around and do introductions. Carol, do you have an opinion about that?
Anybody not know anybody or need to clarify with who's here participating? We're good?
Okay, let us know if you have a question. Because if we skip introductions, we can have more time to talk about bike buses. So thanks, Katie, for coming to be our guest and to talk to us about the Bill Roberts bike bus. And I guess I can just let you, I made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen
Okay.
if you need to.
Hi. Well, hello, everybody. I've been involved on the Facebook page and worked with Amy on some pedestrian biking stuff in Central Park. I am the mom, a Bill Roberts mom, of a first and a third grader. And after last year's bike walk roll to school day, I connected with Mackenzie Hart at Hart Family Cyclery, and we decided to go ahead and try a bike bus. So I think the Bill Roberts bike bus is the only one currently running in the Central Park neighborhood. But we're dreaming big, and we'd like to go ahead and get the materials available for other parents at other local Denver schools where they can go ahead and do the same. So I know I'm going to go ahead and try and share this. I put together a little PowerPoint. Oh, shoot. I need to add a name, a group, or an email to share this. Can I copy this link? All right. Well, I have successfully shared a presentation before, but I'm not sure if it's going to go this time. So
What is it?
I'm going to see if I can get some technical support. This is my husband, Zach.
Right. Hi.
Hey.
Can you share down there?
Let's see what we can do.
I don't see how you can share currently.
Do you have a share screen button on the bottom of your
Share screen?
Is that it?
All right. Let's see. We might be.
Wait, you don't want to share all of it though. Can you see it now?
promising? Yes, we can
There
see
you go.
your slide.
All right.
Do you
So,
have notes at the bottom?
No.
Okay, thank you.
so this is our Bill Roberts
Did we
bike
lose
bus.
it?
Are we still there?
Yeah, no, you're still here. I see it.
You're good.
All right. So we go the first Wednesday of every month. Right now we have one route. We start at the Sand Park. Kickstands up. We've modified a little bit as we've kind of timed out the route. So kickstands up at 8:20, and then we blast some music and we ride to school. Like I said, it started after the National Walk Bike Roll to School Day, May 2023. For those of you that have kids, they offer it twice a year, and we try and go ahead and pair it up with some fun events. And Sweet Cow in the past has done like a give back day. So for all of the parents on here that are involved in DPS schools, they're always looking for ways to go ahead and give back to the community. And we're looking at ways to go ahead and engage our students. So for this one in May of 2023, we had quite a large turnout. I would say over 75 students. It was really cool going in that day. Kids had a lot of fun. So Mackenzie was willing to help us with that. And from there, we were trying to go ahead and get a grant so we could go ahead and maybe get some of the materials and not be dependent on the bike shop, although we love their support, but to be able to what Mackenzie and I kind of visioned, like a bike bus grab and go bag that would be available to other schools that were interested in starting bike buses. Since I was putting the grant together, we decided to make Bill Roberts our first school. And currently we are testing it the first Wednesdays of the month. And the goal is really to go ahead and build community and that culture of having kids have accessibility to school. On a personal level, just knowing that kids in our community are the ones that have the least access to personal vehicles due to their age. They can't drive, having parents that can get them, before and after school. In many cases, that's a privilege that's not offered to all students in the school. So biking, and especially biking in a bike busway where you do have some parent support, we think is beneficial. And then factoring in some of the transportation issues within DPS and schools really nationwide, and then factoring in movement before school, improving focus and concentration, and then also air quality, and using the great resources that we have in the community, especially with the Greenway and that accessibility. So we are a work in progress. We definitely have days where, the weather is a little bit warmer. People are more likely to engage, show up. Tomorrow we will be doing a bike bus, again, starting over at Sand Creek and then working our way up through till we get to Bill Roberts, which is located on Central Park in Montview. Anybody's welcome to join. We sometimes have people look at us as we go by. So if you're out and about and you ever want to join us the first Wednesdays of the month, anybody is welcome to. Next week, or next year, we do want to go ahead and increase our bike buses to occur once a Wednesday. Currently, we are just going to school because after school programs, sports and whatnot, that does seem to be a challenge. But that's both a pro and a con, because sometimes, kids will have bikes at school and then parents who may need to do pickup may not have a way to get those bikes home. So I'll go over some of our challenges in the next slide, but the basics of getting a bike bus started, definitely need to have volunteer support. We like to have at least 3 parent volunteers, one to go ahead and lead the bike bus, another one to do any blocking of roadways or streets, and another one, as we call the caboose, at the end. Radios, a good quality radio that's weather resistant. Rocky Talkies, I'm trying to convince them to go ahead us and give us some radios. So far, I haven't quite convinced them, but having a high quality radio where adults can go ahead and communicate if a kid takes a spill, if there's a bike breakdown. We do have our volunteers wear safety vests. And then since Mackenzie is with us, we've got access to somebody that can fix a flat, or I take my Urban Arrow and just toss the bike on my Urban Arrow and get it to school and figure it out then. We currently have 1 route planned. Next year, we'd like to go ahead and incorporate a 2nd route just to capture more students coming from different areas. With Bill Roberts kind of being on the border, we've got the South, the East, and to some extent the North, but not too much, where kids are coming from. But we would like to add another route along the Greenway by Beeler. And so that's in the works for next year. Kids will forget helmets. They will forget bike locks. They will forget that they had breakfast. And then music in the morning just makes everything better. So kid-friendly playlists are kind of on the extras, but mostly needed. Challenges, there's been a few. Participation, different schools, how we get the information out, how we get students engaged. Right now, we ask that kids do have a parent accompany them. That does limit some of we are the only K-8 school in Central Park. So a lot of our middle school kids, 1, don't want to ride at the pace the bike bus is riding at, and 2, don't want to have a parent involvement. So that's something that we need to consider either keeping or modifying to say, middle school students come help us even with the part that's with participation. So incorporating them into some of the volunteer roles as leading or trailing would be an option that we're thinking of for next year. We normally put out in our Thursday notes, which is kind of our communication to parents that bike bus is occurring. And then we try and post the route so people can join us at any point along the way. The other thing with challenges is just managing the expectations of parents and students. Like, we are a bike bus, we are gonna support, the community. We try and tell the kids, like, ask somebody next to you what their favorite movie is or their favorite fruit or something, like try and learn something about somebody on the way. But you do have those parents and kids that are like ready to zoom off to school. So reminding both kids and parents not to pass the leader. My kids will tell you they wish it went a little bit faster, but I tell them, this is a way to get to school. It's not the fastest way to get to school. So that's kind of the essence of it. Our next steps, like I said, we want to go from monthly to weekly, make that bike bus starter kit. So if there are other schools in the Denver area. And then the big part about biking, walking, and again, also, we're not just bikers. If you have a scooter, if you have a rollerblade, like anything with wheels is great. But improving that bike pedestrian safety around the schools. And so what Carol was speaking to with like connecting with Dottie, I'm very interested in that. Because as we know, as Central Park is growing, some of the challenges along Central Park Boulevard are growing. And with so many of our schools in close proximity due to the building and the land acquisition for DPS schools along Central Park, that both getting on and off Central Park. I know Westerly Creek, and then I know where you're at, Izzy B. You guys have some unique challenges up there too with keeping kids separate from cars, especially at peak times of morning and afternoon. So this is my information. If anybody was interested more about Bike Bus, I can put you in contact with Mackenzie, and happy to answer any questions or concerns or thoughts that people have.
Does anybody want to start with questions or comments?
I love it. Oh, sorry, Janice. I was just gonna say this is like a dream. I would love to try this at the school my kid goes to. So maybe we can chat. Sorry, Janice, go ahead.
I was wondering if there's been any discussion of having something that's less chaperoned. I think Bill Roberts had a program at one point. I'm just looking online. I don't know if it's the one they were doing, but this one's called Active for Me, where they encourage bike riding. These guys have an app with prizes for kids. And it looks like this app also, sort of has gaming where they show how many miles the kids have ridden, how much CO2 they've saved, and so on. A friend of mine, actually my partner, did something similar in Boulder. They weren't able to keep it going, but it was based on giving kids incentives with prizes. So that's my first long question. My second question is, are there enough bike racks at Bill Roberts on the days that you do the bike bus?
So to answer the first question, our PTA president recently gave me a stack of like RFD cards that looked like there was a scanner, and I'm wondering, it's been on my to-do list. There was talk in years previous at Bill Roberts that kids could carry a card and it would track them when they came in. That's something, anytime with kids, like it is fun to motivate them. When we did like bike roll to school day, like having a raffle, handing out stickers, that usually does go over pretty well. And we will have a number of our middle school students that, just based on start times, they're coming from a house where parents have already left, or that's their preferred method. So really involving the middle school kids and being concerned about their safety, how they get there, knowing that a younger kid will likely have a parent riding to school with them, and some of the older kids won't. So making an environment where that's a place where they can explore their neighborhoods and have accessibility to school is definitely on the priority list. And we're working with school administration to go ahead one of the frustrations just at our school specific is that we're right by the greenway and we have gates that make you have to go around. And so finding a way where kids can go ahead and access, the gate to school from the greenway so they can avoid that interaction with the cars. And then, but also making it so the school area zone remains safe from people coming in off the greenway as well. So that's one of the things we're working with on a school issue with our path. But yes, I had not heard of the Active for Me, but that would be something, and getting, DPS in public schools, everybody's kind of short on fundage. So, trying to get some of our community partners to volunteer prizes would be great, especially thinking about long-term. If you participate in a couple of bike buses a year, you can get your name put in a raffle, or you can work up towards certain prizes. I think that's great motivation, and that's something we can definitely take a look at. And I think other schools would like to. What was your second question?
My second question was just on the days that you have the bike bus, are there enough bike racks for the kids?
Currently we do, and we're looking to go ahead and install more in our back playground area, which has the protection from the gate that's around. We have two separate playgrounds, one kind of by our kindergarten entrance, and then one in the back. And our principal is looking to convert kind of a gravel area that's like a no man's zone to add some more bike racks. So we have added 2 sets of bike racks since I've been at the school in 2014. So we have kids from McAuliffe that get picked up outside of the school along 23rd, and it would be nice to have bike racks for them because they've been locking them up to the side of the playground gates, and frequently they get stolen from there.
Yeah, my kids used to take that bus, and that was a big problem.
Yeah. So that's off of school property. So that's more of a Denver City thing, which gets a little challenging with putting bike racks on, just the space between the sidewalks and the street. But again, looking to improve accessibility for all students so they can get to school. So if that means riding your bike to a bus stop, that's definitely something that we want to support and look into.
Can I ask, the bike racks that you have added, were they funded by like the PTA? Do you know?
Let me look into that because there was some money that was available to get it, and it was initiated before I was joined the committee. It just happened to get put on while I was on the committee. So, but it was really well received. But I'll look into that because that's information that, especially schools, if we can share that information, people don't need to do the deep work on trying to figure out how to accomplish that. I can get back to you with that.
Awesome.
Other questions? Comments?
So Katie, this is somewhat of a selfish question because I might have a daughter that might be going to Bill Roberts next year, but has this also, just whether it's along the routes or when you actually get to the school, like identified safe streets related issues that, the city could, thank you. The city could address, like to give you an example, my girls go to the Montessori daycare on Central Park Boulevard, and I just got the city to install some daylighting measures at intersections to make the intersections more visible for pedestrians and bicyclists. But I'm just wondering, have you, has the kids or parents identified, sort of any issues along the routes that would be helpful?
The parents definitely have come to me personally with information, and it's definitely Central Park and along 23rd. With our bike route bus, we stay on the greenway and really try and limit crossings. So, I definitely hear about it, and that Central Park, and for kids that live on the other side of Central Park getting across, because we have new principal leadership who's interested too. So what we're trying to do as a school is, one, tell our parents how to report some of these safety concerns, because somebody will come to me like, oh my gosh, I just almost got hit, like scootering across, like, and they're shooken up, and they tell me, and then they go on with their day, and it doesn't get reported as a problem. So we're updating some of our metrics on our website. And one of the big things for school-wide safety is we want to give parents the tools of, like, you experience this, this is who you should follow up with. This is because otherwise, from my understanding, it goes unaccounted for. And when I call 311 to say my friend almost got hit, it doesn't carry as much weight as when I say I'm the person involved. So yeah, we're definitely aware of stuff that is occurring outside the boundary. Interesting enough, Safe Routes to School has identified more problems around Westerly Creek and their students getting into school. So even though we are on those major thoroughfares of Mountain View and Central Park, either they're logging them in, or but they both also have people really trying to get out of that neighborhood or get into that neighborhood to get to school. So, you know, these concerns definitely apply to all of our Central Park schools and Denver schools for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Central Park's a doozy.
Anything else? Any other questions? Comments?
Is it easy? Well, not easy. What's the parent volunteer landscape like? Then do you have the same people committing to do the monthly, you know, leading the bike bus, or does it change?
We have we have 3 parent volunteers that are normally there, and then we have kind of the influx of some that are sometimes there, and then we're always trying to welcome new families just to get them engaged. Mackenzie has offered those Wednesday mornings as something that is convenient for him. Last month he had a personal matter, so he was out of town, so it was just solely run by parent volunteers. And that's one of the challenges too, you know, parents and community members, I think sometimes they're just feeling the tap of responsibilities and involvement. So how do we go ahead and keep that going and recruit, you know, more people, so it is a more viable source, and it's a fun way. You know, a lot of being in the medical field and some of the psychology stuff, like we can really go ahead and link movement to improved focus and concentration. So as we talk about health of communities, how can we bring this all together? So, you know, a kid that maybe does have some more movement needs can go ahead and get that bike ride in before school and show some changes. You know, what do the kids perceive? What do parents and school leadership perceive on those days where, you know, kids have an opportunity to move their bodies before they start school?
I have one other question if no one else does, but
I do, but go ahead, Amy.
oh, I was just going to ask maybe some from a self-interested perspective, but also from the lens of DPS having the Healthy Start Time initiative. So lots of Bill Roberts is a K-8, so I think you have a slightly later start time than
yeah.
some of the elementary schools, which start at 7:30 or 7:40 in the morning, which I find. I just wonder if you have any thoughts about how to think about that tricky piece of like having enough time to meet and bike to school together when the school start time is relatively early for a lot of families.
Yeah.
I don't know. You haven't had to maybe deal with it at Bell Roberts, but do you have any thoughts?
We did. We had a big jump. The 2 years prior, we had a 7:35 start time. So we went from 7:35 for the last couple of years to 8:50. So depending on where you're going, especially the elementary schools, from what Swigert, I think, is in the 8:50s. Izzy B and Westerly, are you guys 8:30 or 7? You're early 7.
Yeah.
7:30. Okay. So you're riding in the morning when it's darker. We're not getting out till 3:50, so we're riding home when it's darker. So I would say lighting and temperature are the things that will deter parents from feeling like it's safe for their kid to ride into school, or from parents wanting to ride into school. And then, access to appropriate clothing. I know a high school student that was 4 blocks from Northfield that called his mom the other day. He's like, I forgot gloves. So she's like, you've got to keep riding. You're 4 blocks away. They live by Westerly Creek. She's like, I can't help you. So yeah, I definitely see that as a pause for concern. Just temperature and lighting are huge, and getting out the door. I feel like I've lived 3 lifetimes before we leave for school. But last year I'm like, we got to go. So I feel you on that end.
I was taking notes as you were talking, and is there a volunteer training of sorts, or something that you have that you can, a protocol for folks who do want to volunteer?
Right now, it's just parent volunteer, and it's just, like I said, it's people that I know personally. As we've talked about wanting to have like a sort of bike bus kit, Mackenzie and I did talk about, having a parent training day, so people could feel comfortable with the radios. From a legal perspective, I don't know if that gives anybody any protection or puts anybody at a liability by having or not having that. But it's definitely something that's crossed our minds, which is why at the beginning when we started, we did want parents. We were a little uncomfortable with the thought of somebody like sending their, kindergartner with us without, and that responsibility. So we do not have a training, but if we can go ahead and potentially get like a bike bus kit together, I think that would be a necessary piece of it, along with like a first aid kit. Other bike buses, from what I know, like in Portland, like they let it, because they have such a large volume of kids going on those days, they do let their EMS. And I think police know that, they'll be riding those days. So if it does grow, that is something we do need to account for.
Yeah, that's good. And which leads me to talk about middle school kids, which I think need. I'm an educator, I'm a teacher. So there's a whole lot of things that speak to me about what you're doing here. One of them is that whole physicality piece. As a classroom teacher, if I've got kids who are coming in from riding their bikes or scooters or even just running with a group of kids, I am very grateful for that, because that's huge on the body and the mind in a positive way. So just for that, it's good for everybody. But I was just thinking about, when you're saying, oh, the middle school kids want to ride faster, whatever, if they could see themselves in a different role and become mentors of sorts, whether it's, you're responsible for these 3 kids, and not in an invasive way, or the whole group, or this is your role, we'd be so much the better for that.
Yeah.
For a lot of different reasons. And I like what you said about this is, and that ties in for me, is this is a way to get to school, not the fastest way, but it is a way. And so when we can see ourselves, okay, this is how we do it, the business of getting to school on a bike. It's different than, riding, through the park or whatever, or with your friends or what have you. So kind of having a culture, growing a culture around this with different players, I think would be great. And I can see this tied into our education committee as well, because there were some other things you said about this, and I thought, oh, we could collaborate here.
Yeah, I love like the mentorship, ambassadorship, like, with kids, being able to influence.
Your elementary kids are going to pay attention to the middle school kids more than you.
Oh yeah, they idolize them.
I mean, that's just how it goes. They're especially the younger, they're just in awe of middle and high. when there's a
Yeah.
few years gap. So we want to play that for all it's worth. And I think that it can work. I also am working on volunteer efforts for students. And when you talked about the prizes or some of the needs like helmets and that sort of thing, I think we can tap into the community for that. It's just another way to volunteer. If you don't want to interact with kids, you can pay for stuff if you're able to do that. And this is you're very specific about what you need, and that's wonderful. One more thing, Sarah, are you on? Unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
I don't know if you can see me. Here I am.
Sarah recently contacted Chantel Lewis's office, and I just wanted to mention that before I forgot and got off this call. And she needs to know about what's going on with the biking as well. But Sarah, will you just share when you contacted, because we're trying to establish different ties with Dottie now. So would you share what you called them about and how they responded and what they said?
Yeah, I was really pleased. We on Emporia Street have had problems with cut through traffic, and we're a local street and we've got trucks going through there, and it's just been awful for a few years. And we tried to contact Dottie, and we tried with Herndon's office, and just got stonewalled. I mean, they kept putting us off or just telling us, oh, later, and so on and on and on. So we figured with the new administration, maybe we'd get more response. So all I did was email her office like yesterday. And, I was nice. I said, thank you for supporting Vision Zero. And here's what's been going on. And what is your advice for trying to work with Dottie? And they got back to me within a couple hours. And they also copied Maggie Thompson, who's the traffic engineer for our area.
Okay.
This. No response. And she came back. So can you hear me?
Yeah,
Now
we can hear you now.
Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, that Maggie did say that they are going to do a study of our street, which, I mean, that's a good step in the right direction. I don't know exactly what we'll get out of it, but that is one thing we've definitely been asking for. So we were just really happy that we got that quick of a response. And I think it made a difference going directly to the councilwoman's office.
So what
Anyway.
I realize is not directly related to what you're talking about, Katie, but that's what I said at the beginning. I just wanted to make sure that we got that piece of information to the Safe Streets folks who are attending this meeting. But it's also about, we can keep adding on about needs around safe streets. And you're certainly talking about a really important need that can be grown. So
and I guess I think, I was interested that Maggie Thompson, I think she responded so quickly because we have been hounding them for like 3 years. And hopefully we don't have to do that. But I do think the squeaky wheel does get the grease. And we have, every time there's been some request from them to put stuff on a map, like the bike injury network or whatever, I've gotten the whole neighborhood to do that, and I think it's starting to pay off. So,
and I will also say, Sarah, that I know Maggie, and she is a bicyclist herself, and so I think she's a little more sympathetic to safe street stuff. And I've also just noticed in general, Dottie's language and responsiveness around safe street stuff has improved a lot in the last 12 months. So reading the tea leaves, I don't have any inside information, but I think they're sort of more sympathetic to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're definitely moving in the right direction and saying the right things. So,
and I also think for your street in particular, now that those apartment buildings by the Stanley are coming online, they have in their, engineering justification language, more of a warrant to assess streets, because your street is a cut through, it's a residential street. when really it's probably supporting traffic that's closer to a collector or arterial street where they should have more safety measures in place. So I think that's why that traffic study hopefully will justify some real action being taken next year.
Yeah. Yep. Let's hope.
Sarah, I
So that-
appreciate that because we're trying to get a traffic study around Bill Roberts too, and just trying to figure out how to do that. And I see, like, I appreciate the work you've done on your behalf because, you know, again, like students, that Emporia is such a big, you think of like the schools that are around there too. You've got to think like students and pedestrians and their accessibility that is going to be fundamentally better for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So keep after them, you know.
And
Okay.
Katie, you made the point about people saying something to you and then it goes nowhere because they don't report it. And we've learned, haven't we, committee, about if you don't say something, it never happened. The
Yep.
broken record on that one, on that
Yep.
statement. So
Yep.
the more people who speak up and out, the better. So thank you for encouraging your neighbors and parents to do that.
Well, it was Amy that helped me the one time. She said, "You call 311, you get a person." And I was like, "Let me call." But really helping parents and just people in the community know who to contact, because these services aren't accessible if people can't use them. So,
Right.
yeah.
So any final comments or questions or before we leave one another?
I had a question. Katie, you mentioned that you applied for a grant, and I was wondering who provided that.
We've applied for two, 0 for 2, one through one of the bicycle suppliers that does small grants. I have it in my computer buried. I can get that to you. And then at one point, Denver was offering like small grants. I know Avi at Bike Streets had gotten like one for a GoPro. So we were trying to get one of those micro grants. And again, just so bike bus could have its own materials, and we aren't dependent on Mackenzie's good naturedness and willingness to loan out his expensive radios to us.
I was wondering about that. Was it the Community Active Living Coalition, like the CALC grants?
You know, I worked on the one through the bicycle supplier, and then Mackenzie's like, "Hey, I took the information and applied just offhand, like to another one." So I'm not sure what specific Denver one that is. But
I had that thought. And then DPS has like grants, A to Z grants. I don't know if this would fit under that criteria. I was going to look it up.
I've got lots of information. So I know I've done some grant writing through some, through 350 Colorado. So if we want to put one together, I'm happy to go ahead and fill it in. Since it hasn't started yet, and once we have the basic stuff, like if parents want to supply like snacks and whatnot, like once we acquire the stuff, we shouldn't need a lot of new things. It's not like some of these other things where you have ongoing costs. We can talk numbers one day.
It would be interesting for schools to share those resources, because if they have their bike bus on different days, you could have a parent, drop off to the next, school and then share it that way.
Take it back to the shop when you're done with it, like type of thing. So depending on days, times, definitely a pooling of those resources.
And then Carol, before we end, I was going to follow up with some of our business from October's meeting, if we were like moving on and have 10 more minutes.
Was Janice going to say something about the bike racks?
Well, that was on my list.
Oh, that was on your list. Okay. All right.
Do you want to go ahead, Janice, if you have something to add about bike racks?
Yeah, so I've looked into the Denver Moves initiative, and they're really focusing on bikeways. I haven't seen much discussion of bike racks. And I mean, the bikeways are obviously probably the top priority, but I think especially with all the e-bikes, people need safe places to park those multi-thousand-dollar bikes. There is a program through the city for businesses to apply for grants for bikes. But one question I'm trying to answer is how many businesses actually know about that and are applying for them. And then another thing I'm trying to get more information on is expanding bikes at schools, like Katie was talking about, and also at parks, because those are both, you know, city, I think. I don't know about the DPS stuff, but that's really where Denver Moves is focusing, as opposed to on the private land owned by businesses. But I would love everybody's input on the bike racks and, you know, who you think we should be contacting. Because I think that's a big part of the battle, right? Is to know who the actual decision makers are.
So I think that the challenge, the city's program that provides free bike racks for companies, the challenge for that in Central Park is one, the bike rack has to be installed in the public right of way. And the way Central Park is designed, right, is there's usually ample parking and it all faces inward off the street. So it's really challenging to find places for, say, like a curbside parking spot where a bike rack could be installed. And then the second too is I think a lot of businesses in the neighborhood, with the exception of like maybe Flightco and Stanley Marketplace is technically in Aurora, but they just don't seem to care about bike parking. And like the Sprouts in Central Park, like I don't know if you heard this story, but one of their bike racks was literally like cut off by a thief with a saw, like not the bike lock, the bike rack itself. And they have still not replaced it. I think part of it's due to like cost and supply chain and things, but like they clearly don't feel an urgency to make up for their bike parking. So I think that's the other challenge is they may just not be hearing from customers around this.
Yeah.
So I think, so those are the two challenges with like the free program is like, there's not a good place to put them because of how parking is designed in Central Park. Like if you've ever been to like Honey Hill Cafe in Park Hill, they have a beautiful, bike rack just right there in the public right of way that took up a parking spot. But that doesn't really work here in Central Park.
Yeah, I've been working with Stanley for about 1.5 years to try to get them to put more racks on the north side, because right now, everybody has to ride through the parking lot to get to the other side, which is really unsafe. And
Yep.
Same thing, they had some theft, so they took out the racks they had, they put back 4. I'm sure all of you know this, but they're just not very responsive. They got some grant money to put some bike cages in. I can't remember the organization. I've got it written down somewhere, but it's only going to be like 4 racks again. So it's not a very good solution. But I have a lot of information on Stanley because I've been working on that, but they really haven't been very responsive.
Interesting. Yeah, I also feel like the racks that they do have are pretty bad.
They're
just
very
not bolted to
bad.
the ground. Even the ones in the front, you could just like lift them
They're
up
not
and walk away
attached.
with
Yeah.
them.
They're terrible. Mackenzie says he could go over there and just clip them in a minute. So
Yeah, it's not great for a high, and they're highly used. Beautiful on nice days, they're full. So, I also had a thought while you were talking about bike racks at Central Park itself, I think could use more bike racks. Also on nice
Yeah.
days, they have 1 rack, I believe, at least in the main playground area, and it gets full, and then there's nowhere to put your
right.
bike.
I don't think Fred Thomas Park has a single one.
Yeah, Fred Thomas.
No,
Wow.
So
I'm
that would be-
happy. Oh, sorry. I think the new nature center is one of the reasons why we don't go there so much is that there's no bike parking. But they said with the new design, so that is at least an improvement. Maybe that's coming our way.
Yeah, but I would love to work on this somehow if you need other, support. So.
And Parks and Rec, the new executive director is former Councilman Joel Clark, who's also an avid bike guy. So I think he might, and that's a different domain than Dottie or any of the others, so they may be potentially receptive to that.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
Brad. Another entity, but an important one.
Yeah.
That would be great. I mean, Sarah and I have had some copies and we've been talking about the bike racks in addition to Emporia Street, but I'd really love to have help and be contacting the right people, you know?
Well, if I can be helpful, let me know, because I know Jolon pretty well. But I don't know. I've never actually looked on like the Parks and Rec website if there's like a formal place to request things in parks. But if there is, we should pursue that.
Yeah, definitely.
One thing we talked about was approaching Sprouts and Walgreens directly, you know, a few of us. So I actually got the manager's name at Walgreens. So if, you know, I was thinking a couple of us could maybe go at some point and just talk to them, explain what the problem is. Apparently Walgreens, the assistant manager told me Walgreens basically doesn't put bike racks in any of their stores. And if you start looking around, you'll see that that is true.
Interesting. I was going to give a couple of other updates. So thanks, Janice. Kim is not here, but last meeting, she had brought up a desire to have more cameras in Northfield High School campus, like near the concession stand athletic field area, because there's a bike rack there and bikes were being stolen. So anyway, she is working on that, and it has been sent up to the DPS Central Administrative Team, and they have to do some kind of budgeting for that for the next year's school budget to like add funds in to do that. So that seems like there's some progress there, and she said she would keep us updated. Let's see. I followed up with the Safe Routes to School coordinator, John Johnson. He was out on leave for a bit of the lab between our October meeting and now, but he did email me, I think yesterday, asking about, they have done like a new policy procedure document with Safe Routes to Schools, and he said it was approved and it should go into effect January 1st, 2024. But that Dottie hasn't made any formal announcement of this, and he doesn't know yet if they're going to. He said he was still getting up to speed because he just got back into the office, and he would let us know about that. And I'm curious to know what those new guidelines are. Some of it, I think he was telling us, might involve like where you can put certain signs, how you can ask traffic patterns to change around schools, and unifying sort of what the signage looks like around different schools. So it's all consistent for the driver, so they know this yellow sign means this, and school zone's always in this font with this kind of coloring. So he hasn't gotten back to my follow-up yet, but hopefully there's some interesting stuff that could interface also with bike buses and like Safe Routes to Schools program in Denver. So Brad, you have a question? You look like you're, oh yeah, Janice, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I've been talking a lot.
No.
But back on the bike racks, there is a place on Denver 311 specifically for requesting bike racks. So kind of like the map where it talks about intersections and bikeways, but it's on Denver 311. And I can send that link to everyone. I gave it to Mackenzie, so he said he would be providing it to people who come into his store. But that's another thing we can do.
That's all. If you have it, if you can put it in the chat, if you have it now.
Oh yeah.
That would be great, and I can add it to our meeting.
Okay.
Let's see. And then Matt, you're on. Do you want to say anything about the update, reaching out to Denver PD?
Not a very fruitful interaction, but I did reach out to community officer Ferenz about a traffic study for 56th Ave and Central Park Boulevard. And she referred me to Dottie. So I think we probably have a lot of things queued up to go that way to request them to reduce the speed limit, or I think, as Amy was saying, add some additional signage and try to get people to be a little calmer through that area.
Thank you, Matt.
And we had also in October talked about trying to maybe do more about educating the community about safe driving and bicycling. So I had reached out to Bicycle Colorado because they do a lot of webinars about e-bike safety, Bicycle 101 courses, to see if they would be interested in collaborating with CPUN on something, maybe in person. I haven't heard anything back. And I also reached out to Northeast Transportation Connections about the same idea, maybe trying to create some graphics that we can share in the the MCA newsletter or like Front Porch. And I also haven't heard back from them, but I can keep that on my radar and maybe try to follow up again and see if we could get some support in the education piece of things.
Again, let's collaborate. Education committee.
And final thing on my list, let's see. When we talked about automated traffic enforcement, the new bill that was signed into law that goes into effect, I think in summer 2024. And we were trying to be proactive and think about ways we could advocate for getting some of those automated traffic cameras in problem areas in our neighborhood, like 56 in Central Park, for example. And so I reached out to Molly, who's the policy person at Denver Streets Partnership, and asked about that. And she said, the city has to appropriate funds for a study about the implementation of this new law and then complete the study. So we're a few years away from the automated enforcement program being expanded. So just to set your expectations, it doesn't sound like we can, yes, Carol, exactly. Doesn't sound like we can do any advocating for putting these new, cameras in the Central Park neighborhood because the city has this process it has to go through of funding a study and then completing a study about probably where they would expand now that they have the ability to expand. So disappointing, but that's the status of that. Those are my updates. I don't know if anyone else has an update.
Anyone else? Before we say goodbye until what, February? Yes, February. That's when our next meeting will be.
Yep, that's its scheduled meeting, February, first Tuesday in February.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate
Thanks all. Thanks, Katie, especially.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you, Katie.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See you all.